I don't understand how that happened and how everybody lived. She woke up in the middle of the night and there were bats flying around her room. And she thought someone broke in, so she called the police.
What would you say is the number one mistake that somebody makes right after a car wreck?
Assuming, there's a couple of them. But number one, man, people...
Welcome back to What Can We Get Into? This week we have Aaron Siddique. Is that how you say that?
Yeah,
awesome.
That's right.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, personal injury attorney. I'm practicing in Texas and Florida. And so I've been at it for about a decade. We advertise as the Wolf of Law Street or 1-800 The Wolf Accident Attorneys.
I love the Wolf of Law Street. That honestly caught my eye. One night I was scrolling late. I'm like, I want to get an attorney on here. We've had too many doctors.
Yeah.
Let's get somebody to spice this up. So I saw your name and I saw your content. I'm like, this guy would be perfect for this. So I shot you a DM, and that was about, a week and a half ago or so?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So thanks for coming out. You said you're licensed here in Texas and Florida.
Texas and Florida. We're looking to expand into Oklahoma and New Mexico soon.
Wow.
But we've just got a lot going on in Texas. So we're really,
awesome.
We've blown up in Dallas, Fort Worth, and now Houston. We've kind of picked Houston as our next big market, and that's kind of going crazy down there.
How long have you had this business?
So I opened the practice in 2014. Okay. And so interestingly enough, I had the practice but wasn't really scaling it. And we just kind of took what came in. And then I had an opportunity to do a corporate gig. So I was working with a large bank, not to be named, Fortune 100 company. I had 30 direct reports over there.
The in-house job.
The in-house job, man. It was a grind. And so, I was able to have my practice on the side, but after a while, I was like, I'm just done wearing the suit and tie. So if you see some of my other content, usually I'm wearing like a Tupac t-shirt.
I was going to say, we don't have that today.
Yeah, we don't have that
special
today. Yeah. I had somebody in one of my comments, I had a Scarface t-shirt on, and they were like, yeah, I'm going to take legal advice from a guy in a Scarface t-shirt. I'm like, well, usually the best dressed guy in the room is trying to prove something. And,
correct.
Yeah. And we're not. So we just are who we are.
How did you come up with the name The Wolf?
Man, so believe it or not, I don't know if it was something I saw somewhere, but I woke up. I was trying to think of something to stand out. So my last name is Siddique, and if you read it, you don't know how to say it. I've heard Siddique, Sidque. So
Sidque.
Yeah, all of those. And then if you hear it, Siddique, it's hard to spell. So I'm like, man, if I start marketing, branding, advertising, like the name, is going to be a tough one. So how do we stand out? So I literally woke up at like 4:45 in the morning, and I was like, it hit me. I'm like, the Wolf of Law Street, obviously play on words there, but I started searching. Next day I get to the office, started looking. Nobody had the name.
Nobody had it.
First thing I did was I filed for a trademark.
So was that back in 2014?
No. Actually, we operated as the Siddique firm until about 2020. So it wasn't until COVID hit that I was so burnt out on the corporate stuff that I'm like, I really want to scale this part of my practice. I did civil litigation, business law, real estate, and personal injury is actually what I came up doing in South Florida. So I went to law school in the Wild West of personal injury. Miami. So every New York attorney, they're snowbirds. They go down there and they practice. And so I came up working for some old timers there that really showed me the ropes. And so it's kind of my first love. It's not, when you're coming out of law school, it's not sexy to say like, oh, I'm an accident attorney. People are like, they want to go to the Supreme Court. And I just never had that desire.
Sure. My mentor he's the only white guy from Hialeah.
Dude, my law school was actually in Miami Gardens, so not far. And I remember my third year in law school, we get this alert, and it's like someone was just robbed on the basketball courts. Like somebody hopped the fence and shook some people down.
Wow. So how did you get into personal injury?
So I actually found my way there. I was interning for a felony criminal judge in Broward County, so Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
And the first day I walk in there, they were doing arraignments or something, and the judge is like, sit there. And so I sit down 5 feet from these guys. They're bringing them in. They're shackled, and they're doing they're reciting the facts of what their cases are. And the first guy that they bring up, scary looking dude, and they start just tattoos all over his face, and they start saying what he did, and this has just stuck with me for over a decade. They said, well, he had an on and off again girlfriend, and during an off again period, she went to another lover's apartment, and this guy was spotted walking down the middle of the street with a ladder. And so he goes to this apartment complex, he puts the ladder up, he climbs to the second floor, and he breaks through the window, cutting himself up in the process. Now, while they're saying this, he's laughing like hysterically. And so I'm like, where is this going? So he gets into the apartment. He beats the guy almost to death. He beats the female very badly. And the next time the witnesses see him, he is dragging this woman up the middle of the street, covered in blood, by her hair. And so in that moment, that is literally the first thing that I heard on my first day. I thought, man, I don't think criminal law is for me, man. Like this is not it. And so the judge at the time was a big Miami Heat fan. And I would come in and there would be days where like literally the Heat would lose. And I'm like, oh, these people are screwed that are coming in here today. And
wow. It's a bad day to be in court.
Heat won. You might want to be in front of him on that day. And so just the disparity in criminal sentencing, honestly, what I was exposed to there, I was like, this is not for me. So it was almost a process of elimination. And a firm down there called Dell & Schaefer, shout out, like I'm still on great terms with those guys. They took me in and I started writing criminal motions. And then pretty quickly they're like, we have some need in our demand writing department on personal injury. So I started learning from them, and kind of the rest is history.
Now, when you get into personal injury, does that basically, what percent of that is car accidents for most personal injury attorneys? Is it 80%? Is it 50%?
I'd say for us, it varies. We're about 70-30. So some firms only do car accident cases. Some firms will not take certain cases like slip and trip and falls. We kind of do anything where someone was injured as a result of the negligence of another. So we've looked at product liability cases, and we've looked at abstract premises liability cases where, for example, we had a girl get in a swimming pool and get a flesh-eating eye amoeba. It was all over the news 8-9 years ago. So we don't limit it to car accidents, but that's about 70% of what we do.
Okay. So obviously, as a chiropractor, I deal with a lot of auto accidents. What would you say is the number one mistake that somebody makes right after a car wreck?
There's a couple of them. But number one, man, people from the legal side, I'll address it from the legal side. Sure. You address it from the doctor side, but apologizing. I think there are some humans that their default nature is to be like, I'm sorry. So that's kind of the first thing. Second thing is admitting fault. And so there are people that kind of goes hand in hand with apologizing. When you say you're sorry, you're kind of conceding that you did something wrong. And so this comes up routinely in depositions when we get into litigation. Well, if you didn't do anything wrong, why did you apologize? So I say that's a big one. The other one is not seeking treatment. And so that's where I think we're probably aligned.
Sure.
People assume that the little bit of stiffness or a little bit of soreness is minor, even if it's a low impact accident. And so they'll delay getting treatment. And the first thing that an insurance adjuster loves to do is to pull up the medical records and pull up the police accident report and go, okay, this accident happened on May 1st and you didn't seek medical treatment until May 7th. Maybe something else injured you. Maybe you really weren't hurt. What's going on there? And so it impacts the value of cases where people realistically were injured, but they try to tough it out, or they don't go get it properly documented and treated from the get-go.
So you obviously hear that 2 years, like you can open up a case, at least I've been told that, 2 years from a wreck. What is the time, the sweet spot of you want to be seen and checked out?
I'd say within 72 hours,
okay.
if at all practical. So, and some firms won't take a case if you sought treatment outside of a certain window.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because of those challenges that I discussed with insurance adjusters. It's just a barrier to a good recovery. And so, yes, a statute of limitations, particularly in Texas, is 2 years from the date of your accident. That doesn't mean wait 2 years to seek treatment.
Right.
So we will look at cases up to a few months, or if there was initial treatment, maybe they sought care at the ER or urgent care, and then later went back and had some continuing pain and got some treatment. That stuff's explainable and that's reasonable, but you should definitely try to, if it's practical, to go get treatment within 72 hours.
So one mistake is not seeking treatment within a moderate amount of time.
Correct.
What other mistakes do people make post-car wreck?
Big one is assuming that both their insurance company and the at-fault insurance company are friendly or on their side. So your own insurance policy, this is something we tell all of our clients. We need you guys to make sure, and if you don't have it today, it's not going to help you on this particular accident, but make sure you get uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. And when you have to get into that coverage, the interesting thing is people think, well, it's my insurance company. They have to do right by me. Yes, in every contract, there's an inherent duty for them to act in good faith, but do they?
Obviously not. I don't think you'd have a job if they did.
No, man. I would be, I'd be selling oranges on the side of the street. But literally, they make the mistake of getting lulled into that friendliness that they're trained. Those guys are trained to disarm you by being empathetic and friendly. And sometimes they make offers to settle. So I'll give you an example. We had a client who called, and actually it was a friend of mine, and he said, hey man, I got T-boned. And within an hour, I thought it was strange. The other person's insurance company called me and they were super friendly and they asked if I was okay. And I said, I thought so, but my shoulder's been hurting since the accident. And they said, well, why don't you let us send you $1,500? $1,500. And that'll cover some chiro care, a couple of visits. And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. They upped the offer to $2,500. He said, no, I'm good. He called me. His case settled the combined limit. So we got the max policy from the defendant, and then we got the max out of his underinsured motorist, and his case settled for around $90,000.
Is your advice to never, ever take that money that they call and offer within the first few days?
1,000%.
Okay.
1,000%.
I just had this discussion with a patient a few weeks ago. Sometimes they'll bring it into me. It's kind of funny. They're like, help me here.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't sign that, because if you do,
yeah,
we're going to have a little bit of an issue of me seeing you here, or you're going to be liable for this, which a lot of times I've heard 500, I've heard 300, right? Yep. And sometimes if you got a 19-year-old kid that gets in a wreck and they're like, hey, you want $500? They're like, can you sell me it like now? You know what I mean? I think I wonder how often they're successful with that. We had a guy, I'm being flooded with all these examples. We had a guy, I think they offered him, he was injured at a Home Depot, and they offered him a $50 gift card. And, and we kind of joke about in the office, like, if you're going to get hurt at a Home Depot, but don't take the first offer. We settled his case for $50,000. There you go. That's a good multiplier. You should put that as a testimonial.
Yeah.
$50 to $50,000.
50 to 50 grand.
If someone was to accept that money and say they were to need surgery, is there a such thing to reopen that, or you're basically saying your liability is gone?
Man, I'm glad you've asked that question, because this is a really important one, and this comes up once, probably twice a month in our office. Someone will call and they'll say, well, yeah, I signed something. I'm not sure. They did pay me some money. Can you take a look? The accident was 8 months ago, and it didn't hurt that bad then, but I have so much pain down my right leg I can barely walk. And we'll go look, and they've signed a release, and they've released their claims and discharged them forever. And there's not a way to undo those releases. I would say a 9.9 out of 10, like as an attorney, I never say anything's impossible, right?
Sure.
I'm down to fight. Let's go. But when you've contracted away those rights and signed a release, it's almost impossible unless they procured the signature through fraud. Ignorance of what you're signing is not a defense.
Now, let me ask you this. You right away, you sign that, right? You take the money. Their insurance company's off the hook. Does your insurance company ever get involved, or can you then go to health insurance, or does health insurance go, not my problem, you were in a car wreck? Like, how you obviously can work this way down the path a little bit, right?
Yeah, you can. So a little bit of a gray area, on what you say to your health insurance company, but your auto insurance, the one applicable coverage, or the two, would be PIP, or personal injury protection benefits. And that's, interestingly enough, the only way to double recover in Texas. So you can't recover twice for the same thing, but personal injury protection benefits are non-subrogatable. And what that means is your insurance company has to pay you those benefits. They're no fault, so it can't cause your rates to go up. And they cannot then seek subrogation from the other insurance company, which means the right to be paid back. So you can recover from the person who hit you, the defendant and third party, and you can pair that with those personal injury protection benefits if you have them. Some states, this is mandatory. So Florida is a state where they have statutory personal injury protection, that the state requires every policy to have that. In Texas, it's optional. So you are required to sign a waiver to reject it. There is no reason to reject that. The pennies that you pay for that.
What's interesting is I was going to ask you this. The minimum, if you do select it, is $2,500, correct?
Yes, correct.
I asked my wife this question when we moved here, because I've been here a year. We were in Kentucky, which I believe is mandatory there.
Okay.
It's $10,000, right? Here, I had a couple of PIP cases come through, and I was like trying to navigate those waters, being in a different state. I asked my wife, I said, hey, what do we pay for our PIP on our insurance? Because we basically came down here from Kentucky where it was $10,000, and I knew that the minimum here was $2,500. I was like, I'm curious if they dropped it or whatever. She goes, oh no, the insurance agent kept it at $10,000. And I was like, just out of curiosity, call him and say like what it would cost to drop it from $10,000 to $2,500, $7 a month to drop it. I'm like, keep it.
Keep it.
What do you recommend people to have with PIP?
PIP is great. And if you can get 10, if it's not impacting your policy in a major way. So they underwrite everyone's policy differently, but it's worth an ask. So PIP covers lost wages, lost time from work. It covers medical bills and expenses. So it's worth having. Just maybe you weren't injured, but maybe you were forced to miss work. So if you can get 10, get 10. If you can get 15, get 15, Tesla, interestingly enough, we've been seeing these policies for Tesla owners, and they have a really robust coverage for if you have Tesla insurance. I'm not a Tesla owner, but what I've seen is they offer routinely $10,000 worth of PIP. And I don't know if that's because started in another state, but that's unique to Texas to have that much coverage. Most people carry the minimum.
That's interesting. So Tesla itself, you can get insurance through Tesla?
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. I've never heard of that.
So we just settled a case for a family of 5, I want to say. And I'm not sure on the exact numbers because I saw them coming through. I'm like, okay, we got for every person in the vehicle, all 5 of them, we got the $10,000 in personal injury protection. Again, non-subrogatable. And then we got the max policy limits from the defendant driver. And then we were able to get into the uninsured Tesla coverage. So the dad in the family, I want to say his settlement alone was $150,000.
Wow.
When you combine all those things.
This obviously is a pretty significant accident, right?
It was, but it was not as severe as you'd think. I think part of it, when you do have uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage and personal injury protection, it's almost like, when you go play the Powerball or something and they're like, you want the power play?
You want the multiplier?
Like, dude, this stuff is the power play, the multiplier.
I love that. So obviously the insurance companies don't want you to know this.
No.
What other things do they not want us to know as consumers?
Well, exclusions. So one of the things that we run into, and I have in a former life done some first party like property insurance claims. And I have some content on this too. Some of the biggest things that result in them avoiding paying what they should pay are exclusions. So if you get a policy, most people are not going to read 97 pages of fine print, right? But what you should skip ahead to, definitely what's excluded. And in the context of a vehicle accident, well, do you have an exclusionary policy that restricts other drivers, or does it cover everyone in your household? You know how many kids go drive their parents' car and get in an accident, and then the parents think they're covered only to find out that it was an exclusionary policy and only the listed drivers were allowed to drive the vehicle?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
You know, there's a very famous, I wouldn't call it a case, but there is a guy who has a very vast car collection in Plano. Do you know what I'm talking about? His son, kind of a YouTuber content creator guy, was driving his purple Pagani.
Yeah.
Have you heard about this?
I have. And
wrapped it around a tree.
Yep.
Wasn't insured to be driving dad's car. Dad was fine with it. He goes, I'll never forget. I mean, this guy's like a big private equity, multifamily. I mean, he'd write the check, get another one. But it was kind of funny because I heard about that then. Yeah. You're talking $3-4 million carbon fiber Pagani.
Yeah, dude.
Hey, Dad, wrap the Pagani around a tree.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a car guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a big car guy, man. I love, by the time I was probably 22, like I couldn't even afford it. You know how much negative equity, like I was just rolling. I got to have that Mustang. Oh, no, not a Mustang guy anymore. I got to have this Camaro SS. Okay. Not a Camaro SS guy. Like what's the next one? And so, dude, you send me into a car dealership, I'm buying something. So I just try not to look at them when I drive by. You know, it's like, it's
you have a dream car?
You know, I've been working my way up and I've been trying to like pace myself. So right now I drive Porsche Taycan 4S. So I went electric, but I think the next one, and it's almost like, it almost feels absurd to say it, but I do want to get a Urus. I want a Lamborghini Urus.
Yeah.
Or a Rolls-Royce Wraith. And so
there we go.
Yeah.
So have you seen the pictures of the new 26 Urus that they made like an SE model of?
Yeah.
It looks like a Audi like Q5 stripped down. Like it looks almost like it has hubcaps on it. Have you seen that?
I have seen that.
Holy cow. What is Lambo doing here?
What are y'all doing?
Wow. So the insurance companies don't want you to read all the fine print. They don't want you to know all this stuff. You know, it's crazy to me because a lot of people, they get into this stuff and they don't necessarily know what they have, what they don't have. Would you advise every single person that gets in a wreck to seek an attorney's counsel? Like, what's the line to draw of like, okay, I need an attorney on this case?
I would say it's absolutely worth having a consultation. Like almost any accident injury attorney is going to do a free consultation with you. And what you do want to make sure, you should call me, but if you don't call me, you want to make sure you talk to the actual attorney. So a lot of larger firms or volume firms, even smaller firms, they have an intake team and they're not attorneys. And they'll spend 30 or 45 minutes with you listening to the set of facts, evaluating what's going on the other side and point you in the right direction. And so we've done that countless times. So we even offer like, hey, we'll review your policy and tell you what kind of coverages your insurance company doesn't want you to have that you should have, just as a parting gift. So, it's strange to me when I look at the cases that we have in office and the cases that we sign up every week and every month. People have this misconception of attorneys, particularly personal injury attorneys, that we want to fight about everything and that we take a set of facts that maybe isn't realistic, chasing ambulances and making a mountain out of a molehill. 95% of the cases that we have in our firm, the fight is not about liability. It's clear and it's established. We have you on video running that red light, or defendant admitted fault. 95% of the fight is value. So you want to tell me that you can, and you see this here, you want to tell me that you can put a dollar amount on a lifetime worth of pain? Right. And so that's the real struggle. And how do you prove that value? You got to come see you, somebody who's knowledgeable, that can use the right ICD-10 codes, right? If you go to someone that's not dealing with car accidents and that doesn't have the experience like you're not going to get that documentation. And that documentation is your only way to prove
correct
the value of your case. And so I think insurance companies bank on the fact, and look, they're in business. Their entire business model depends on what? Paying out less than they take in.
Correct.
So it's not in their best interest for you to seek counsel. And whether that's just general advice, we tell people, hey, maybe this is not an appropriate case, but you should say this, this, and this, and you should make sure that they don't pay you less than this, this, and this.
If someone's not in a state that you practice in, how do they find a good attorney or sniff out a bad one?
Yeah. So definitely some lawyer red flags. I would say, one, if you ask to do a consult with the actual attorney and they just stick you with their intake team, red flag. Not knocking anybody. I hope to one day be a massive, massive powerhouse with thousands of cases, but I hope that we would still in that growth maintain boutique service. So that's what we pride ourselves on. You have access to an attorney. You get that attorney's phone number. And they're adequately staffed. So we tell people, and I tell people all the time, look, rule of 3. This is how I grew up. My dad, anything you want, get 3 bids, talk to 3 people, get 3 consultations. And I hate to borrow from a local guy, Clay Cooley, shot me first, shot me last. Either way, come see Clay. That's genius.
It is genius.
I feel the same way. When you hire an attorney, it's a marriage. Okay.
It is.
So are you going to get on Tinder, click on the hottest chick, and then immediately marry her? Probably not. Like, that's not going to end very well. Do your due diligence, read reviews, what these people are putting out, they have to stand behind. Do they have posted results? Have they been practicing more than a minute? That's important.
Sure.
I still learn stuff every day after more than a decade
You should.
of practice.
If you don't, that's a problem. Yeah.
That's a problem. So I think there's a handful of things that people could do to make sure they're in the right spot.
How important is it when somebody's getting checked out that they have imaging versus just a physical exam when you are in litigation with these insurance companies? Yeah.
Imaging a lot of times will make or break the value of a case. And so you may say this to some of your patients as well. When you walk into an ER after an accident, their only job is to make sure you don't die there. You know, they don't care if you live in a lifetime of pain. And when they run their imaging, they're looking for very acute and particular things, fractures, hemorrhages, serious stuff that could kill you there. So when when they come to see you after you've treated them for a while and you've looked at their chief complaints, you know when to send them for imaging. And that is critical because those soft tissue injuries that cause the most pain long-term in life are not identifiable on an X-ray.
Correct.
Some you can see some stuff on an
X-ray.
X-ray.
There are some things in the weeds, but yes.
But ultimately, to identify a continued source of pain, these soft tissue injuries, herniations, things like that, they have to be seen on an MRI.
I have this conversation a lot with patients. Well, the urgent care said all the imaging looked great, just a little bit of arthritis.
Yeah.
And I always say their job is, like you said, to keep you alive.
Yeah.
Their job is to not say, hey, this XYZ looks like it could have sustained a little bit of trauma, et cetera. So I think that your read from an urgent care or even an ER, their radiologist on staff is much different than a dedicated imaging facility or an X-ray within my office where I know what's happening. And not to mention, I'm treating this. Yeah. They're slapping you with some steroids, some muscle relaxers. Have a good day. You didn't die. We were successful. I have a much different approach where I have to treat these tissues. So I'm taking a much further look into these, doing added views, flexion, extension, looking at things such as how whiplash can affect that. But it is sort of a fun thing to debunk is the ER said that everything looked great.
Yeah.
And I've seen these reports where it's, unremarkable after somebody had a pretty bad head-on collision or something like that. And yeah.
You made an interesting point about the radiologist. So for the people watching or listening to this that may not know what a radiologist does, that is the person that is trained to take the images that the MRI machine or the X-ray produced, and they read that or they look at that for certain things, fractures, disc herniations, things like that. If you work in an ER and you're a radiologist that looks at really traumatic images all day, every day, you're conditioned to see that. And my point earlier about needing to be somewhere that understands the mechanisms of injury via car accident and that see those every day, the radiologists that are looking at our images are trained with a particular eye and they document things. Case in point, we had an image that was read in an ER, and it listed a herniation as I don't remember what it was, like 2 millimeter herniation at see some disc level. And then later there was a hernia. We had a different MRI, and the radiologist read it as a much larger herniation, and that's important because it talks about the severity of that accident, right? That's how much the disc is protruding
into the spinal canal. Yes.
And so we actually had to bring in a third radiologist because of the discrepancy to validate that our radiologist was correct. And that's no knock against a radiologist in an ER. They're again making sure you're there and you're alive, but that would not have been appropriate to provide the insurance adjuster because it doesn't tell the accurate picture of how injured that person was.
How do you think AI changes this with, obviously I can throw your x-ray into AI right now, ChatGPT, and it's definitely not to where it should be making diagnoses, right, but it's pretty good. I mean, do you think that AI is going to change that field? I've had a lot of doctors on the show that think that radiologists could be nervous.
I think that any industry that's impacted by technology, whether it's the cotton gin, if we go all the way back 100 years ago, I think where there's change, there's opportunity. So sure. I think the field will adapt.
Right.
I think it'll get better.
Sure.
As the AI gets better.
I think where it really shines is I think that you pull a little bit of the subjectivity out of it. And I was just having a conversation with a patient yesterday as I was looking at an MRI, and we were talking about how they use the words mild to moderate, moderate to severe, right? And kind of what that means. And the patient was sort of confused on whether that was related to her pain level or how things looked. And I was like, it's basically a scale of 1 to 5, mild being 1, severe being 5, and all of those in between. And it's subjective, right? Yep. I'm a fan of a radiologist that's going to write millimeters, going to write measurements, going to write percent of occlusion, going to write things like that. The mild, moderate, severes are very subjective. Yeah. How many severes have you seen? What do you look at all day long? Do you look at severe herniations from car crashes? Or do you look at, urgent care?
Degenerative stuff.
Degenerative stuff. And I think that adds a lot of subjectivity, which in your field, you're trying to pull that out, tease that out, and have the objectivity, which I think that AI will hopefully help to maybe close that gap just a little bit. And then there's hopefully that they're not missing things, and hopefully they're not undervaluing certain things on your case. I assume you see that sometimes as well. Yeah. And,
I think AI is impacting the legal field as well.
Yeah, that was my next question for you.
So the intersection of this stuff is quite interesting. So we have, we don't rely on it at all, but we'll check certain things against AI. And so one of the ways that I've seen it help in law firms, there's an entire company, I will not name them, they're marketing to attorneys, and their whole deal is when you put out your demand package, you can upload all of these medical records into the AI, and it will actually take kind of the human element. So one thing that we do is we do read through all of these medical records before we put our demands together. So we want to extrapolate and highlight for the insurance adjusters. Like if you guys have done your job, you've documented these injuries correctly. But we have to go highlight that for the adjuster. So we lead them to water. And obviously that's a big, there's a big human element there. And anytime you have a human element, there's margin for error. And so what the AI is doing now is I could drop 1,000 pages of medical records, and then it will cross-reference with my demand and say, hey, there was a reference or a referral on page 685 of, the doctor's records, and I don't see that noted, or I don't see that you have a medical bill associated with that.
Wow.
So associating, you got to have the medical records and you got to have the billing to support it. That's how you create the economic damages model there. If your attorney misses one thing and sends an incomplete demand because you have a complex medical case, that could be value on your case. So the tools are definitely helpful, and they help take some of that human element out. But for us, we still have to have.
What field of law do you think is the most threatened by AI? I love to ask this question. I've asked this like every podcast guest, by the way.
Yeah. So it's not going to be family law. It's not going to be criminal law. It's going to be some aspect one level removed. So there are a lot of attorneys, like, for example, appellate brief writers, the people that do research, transactional attorneys, the ones that do lease reviews. Like, you could train up AI really well to do a lease review.
You could. And what's funny is I obviously bought this business last year, and there was a lease involved. There was, an asset sale involved. And I didn't know much about AI at the time, but nowadays I would have just thrown that thing in there and been like, are there red flags? Like, what do I need to watch out for? And it's crazy how smart it is to be like, this is not normal for your state. Like, make sure that to me, it's crazy.
And it's only as good as
what you ask it.
So Correct. That's the other thing that's kind of the missing component. Like, if even if you're a layperson and you're like, oh, I'm going to have this write my own demand letter. Well, there's a whole lot of things in the chain of what needs to happen to even get the correct prompts in there, because it does make mistakes. That's the other thing. And so if you don't have somebody fact checking that, but I think really, like, brief writing, people that hang their hat on appellate work, somebody's still got to go in there and argue the case, but it can review and synthesize, which was a big thing we learned to do in law school, which is synthesize the case, meaning validate that the law is still good. If you're citing to a Supreme Court case, you got to make sure that there wasn't another ruling that overturned it to make your argument correctly. And so I think AI will replace, or at least expedite the amount of, reduce the workforce needed to conduct these synthesis exercises. But I do think transactional attorneys are probably the first to have a reduction in workforce.
I can see that.
and then probably on the appellate side. So the guys that go out there and actually argue this stuff, they're safe for now, but the dudes behind the scenes,
this runs in parallel to 2 or 3 doctors that I've had before you in that chair. And they've had the same comments, but in the medical field. If you're doing procedures as a doctor in our lifetime, you're probably good. I mean, there's robots involved, but they're not running the show. There's a doctor running the robot, right? They basically, both of the doctors that I'm referring to, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Ferraro, were talking about how, if you're behind the scenes, if you're doing pathology, if you're doing pharmacy, radiology to a piece, you're not doing procedural codes, meaning like you got your hands on people, you're doing surgeries, injections, whatever. That's probably the first that's going to change and threaten your job a little bit. And I could see that. You said the same thing, but from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
I want to touch back on when we talked about MRIs, how you can have 3 radiologists see 3 different things. What happens on the other end of the spectrum if somebody has a severe amount of pain, but all the imaging is clear from your end? I know what I would do. I've had a couple of videos actually go viral talking about this, because this must happen to a fair amount of people where they have pain and it doesn't always show on the images. How do you approach that from a legal standpoint when you're trying to go in and argue injuries, but it's not there on a film?
Yeah, the big distinction there is we're talking art over science. So, convincing an adjuster, very hard to do. And sometimes you'll get an adjuster that says, there's no findings, but I understand that pain is very real. So battling subjectivity where there's little objective data that makes sense is one of the most difficult parts of the job. And so at that point, it becomes an exercise in really reading human beings, and it becomes an art. You can find ways to connect with people. And I'm talking in the context of a jury. It's much harder to do when you're dealing with an insurance adjuster or an attorney and you're negotiating. I can tell them, hey, this is worth $1 million. They're going to say, show me the economics on why someone's back pain is worth $1 million. But to that client, they would pay $1 million to be back at their baseline and to be pain free, to never have had the accident occur. And so that is a really difficult part of the job. How do we paint that picture? And we do that by reading a jury and understanding our client and telling the story beyond what's on paper, right? Okay, this is a real example. You enjoyed belly dancing in your 60s, and these herniations to your lower back are so bad that the thing that brought you joy in life, you can no longer do. And so what is a life? What is a life? And what brings value to your life if you can't enjoy those things that way? And so we have an interesting case right now that we're struggling on conceptually on how to package this, because that's where it's headed. And I don't want to give too much away, but it involves an eye injury. And what is the value of perfect vision? When you're on your deathbed and you start reliving all those moments in your life, to you, that's the only thing that matters. That's worth $1 billion trillion, because you're about to go somewhere else that money doesn't matter. So if now every one of those memories from this day forward is blurry and is not as sharp a focus, and you can't savor it as much, what's it all worth? So those are really difficult questions to answer. But yeah, we struggle with that. That's a hard one.
I feel like you've convinced me, man. You're a good attorney. So, this happens in my practice a little bit, where there's negative x-rays, and a day doesn't go by. And this is an important piece of this. If we're talking strictly x-rays, a lot of times, a car wreck is not going to show any sort of immediate damage. Because a lot of times it's soft tissue. And then for the soft tissue to translate into bony change, which is what you'll see on an x-ray, takes a little bit of time. Every bit of 3 to 5 to even a decade in terms of years. A day doesn't go by to where I have someone either new in my office or a patient that I've been treating for a year, where I can look at, say, a cervical spine. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, and I go, healthy, 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 very degenerated, healthy. And 9 times out of 10, maybe not 9, maybe 8.5 out of 10, that leads back to a car wreck in their teens, in their 20s. Felt fine at the time, never got it checked out, but there seems to be no other related trauma. Now, there's other people that are football players, and you can't necessarily make that. But to me, it's very evident that if you have a car wreck and you have whiplash and you leave it alone, you don't get it checked out, and you don't do anything to properly rehab that, you could have lasting symptoms or pain 25, 30, 50 years down the line from something that happened when you were 16.
100%. And I think some of the things, as imaging tools get better, as we get better at diagnosing and, hearing symptoms and correlating them to certain injuries, and technology gets better, we're finding ways to document this. But ligament laxity, for example, right? If you look at a ratable impairment rating, and you look at the different categories on where these things fall in, ligament laxity actually rates higher in terms of impairment than a fracture. So you don't have, an insurance adjuster might look at it and say, broken bone is worth more than ligament damage. But if you stretch that rubber band out, and that's what keeps all that stuff intact, at the end of the day, as you age, it's only going to get substantially worse. And that's why people do, aging is an interesting thing. And that component of it is a little bit lost because it happens so slowly that you don't correlate things that happened to you 6 years ago, acute trauma, to why you're suddenly feeling this way today. It's because the rubber band wore out, bro. And it wore out a little bit sooner than it should have because of the accident.
Yeah. And when I first got into practice, if I had somebody come in and they were in a mild 15 mile an hour rear end, they had a little bit of whiplash, as a young doctor, I'm like, what do we got here? Right? Got some neck pain. It'll be gone in a month. But after seeing this repetitive, it was just in my face. It was hard to ignore that all of these seem to relate to car wreck trauma, to where I became very passionate about hey, your loved one was in a car wreck, like get them in here, get them assessed, because you have a window here that is finite, to where if this goes on for even a year and you leave it untouched, I'm a firm believer that it's like a cavity, right?
Yeah.
If you let a cavity go and you're like, I'll just, whatever, I'll keep not brushing my teeth, it's going to turn into something bad. You're going to have to get a root canal. If you don't continue to take care of it, it's going to turn into a false tooth, et cetera. And I always use that analogy with patients, but I'm passionate about that because I see it and I see how it affects people. And I try my best to educate people on to get checked after, even if you have zero symptoms. A lot of people have this, they get in a car wreck and they're worried about, oh my gosh, am I going to make it to work? Oh my God, I got to deal with the insurance company. Is my car going to be totaled? That they don't always think about, my neck hurt. It's like that 3, 7, 10 days later, they're like, wow, now my shoulder hurts. Yeah. Now my neck hurts, et cetera. Which is something I'm super passionate about. But
yeah, there's an area of practice. And so to kind of take what I was saying earlier about as technology evolves and imaging evolves and as our understanding of certain things in the body evolves.
Right.
Case in point, traumatic brain injuries. It started with the conversation around CTE in the context of football players, right? And now the diagnostic tools and even treatment options that have kind of proliferated over the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years even did not exist before. And it has shaped our industry. And I became very passionate about traumatic brain injuries. I lost my younger brother. He died of a brain tumor.
Wow.
But I spent, so it grew so fast it ruptured. And so we spent 6 weeks in a neuro ICU. Jeez. And this was on the front end of becoming an attorney. And right around the time all the CTE stuff was happening. And so I was there every night. I stayed with him at night, 8 hours a night. The beeps, the care, I talked to every doctor, every nurse, and it was a crash course in brain trauma. And every time something happened, he battled hydrocephalus, for example, I would learn something new about the brain. And so he eventually woke up. He was in some sort of a coma, and then he woke up after 6 weeks and started rehab. And ultimately, the brain cancer took his life. But the impacts that mild to severe traumas had on his brain and the setbacks that even a minor thing occurring during the course of his complex treatment really surprised me. And so one of the things that we do and that I'm very passionate about is assessment for even mild TBEs. I had a client who came to me, a young girl. She was 19 and very minor impact car accident, but she had prior concussions as a high school athlete. And so this minor impact, once you have one assault on your brain, it takes longer to recover and it makes you more susceptible to future negative consequences. So she had a concussion on a mild case, and we filed suit, came in very close to the statute of limitations, and she only had about $2,500 in medical. But she had a concussion diagnosis. And so there's, different ways to that these things are classified medically: TBI, mild TBI, concussion. She had a concussion diagnosis. The $2,500 in medical bills and a low impact car accident case, the adjuster's looking at that and they're looking at the data and they're going, that's a $5,000 max settlement. Well, this is what they said. So we go to an early mediation because I had a rapport with this particular attorney. He understands that we're passionate, we're aggressive, we're vigorous, but we're also reasonable. We're not going to tell our client you're getting $1 million when their case is not worth $1 million. But with the fight became about the TBI. And so they thought they had a minimum policy, by the way. So it's $30,000. We had $2,500 in medical bills. $5,000 offer, $7,000 offer. We're with a mediator. Even the mediator is telling me, what are you doing? We get them up to $17,500. That's a pretty good result because a lot of times insurance adjusters just use a multiplier. What's the severity of the injury, the property damage, and were there any bad acts? And then they say, yes, yes, yes. Okay, we'll take the actual dollars that were spent on the medical care and we'll do a multiplier and we'll give them that. That's their computer program going back to pain, telling you your pain is irrelevant. This is what the computer program tells us your case is worth. $17,500. They are pissed off. They're angry that I'm like, no, we want the whole policy. We want 30 grand. Like, this is absurd. And so the mediation ends. And so she had gone two years. Now it's 2 years since the accident. We weren't able to kind of give her suggestions or make referrals for her care to document this stuff properly. And so we referred her over to a group that was able to do an evaluation, review her medical history, document, do some imaging, and document it properly 2.5 years after the accident.
Wow.
We supplied that data in litigation, and it had basically somewhat of not a full expert report, but we had something drawn up that kind of showed a damages model based on the concussion. So they tendered the policy, the $30,000 policy, which I think is a huge success, but with just a minor amount of data. Now imagine, fast forward 5 years, when everybody is able to diagnose and properly get imaging on these even mild TBIs. They are massive case value drivers. And when I say case value, by the way, people think that, I tell folks this all the time. If some people just fundamentally have a problem with attorneys, right? Because they think that we're trying to game the system or we're only out for money. The only way the system, our entire legal system, is designed to right a wrong is with the award of money damages. If I could make you feel better, I would make you feel better over getting you money. And right. I think a lot of people would agree with that. So it's not a matter of greed or gaming the system or making insurance rates go up. It's a matter of giving people justice the only way the system is set up to do it. Yeah. So her story didn't stop there. She had an uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage policy. And the way those work, I know we touched on it earlier, is that your own insurance company steps into the shoes of the defendant. They have all of their defenses, and even though they're your insurance company, they will present those defenses and they try to avoid paying you any money. When you have a case when you get full policy limits on a minimum policy and then you go to make an uninsured motorist claim, you have to prove that you got everything that the defendant had and there was nothing else, which we did. We showed them they tendered $30,000. And then they have to believe that the damages exceed what you already received. Okay, you got 30 grand. You were covered and you were compensated appropriately for an injury. We're not paying you anything. And that's what we got. But of course, like again, TBIs, the lack of understanding on this shocks me. And so we then went back and took all of the data that we had received and we repackaged it. And I can't remember the exact number, but I do think that we got an additional $40,000 or $45,000 off her policy.
Wow.
So a $2,500 in medical damages to a $75,000 settlement by simply being aware and passionate enough about this to pursue it in that way.
I love that. And this just leads me to the point that you don't have to be in a 100-mile-an-hour vehicle. You don't have to be ejected to have these type of injuries. I mean, we were taught in school that whiplash can occur at literally 10 miles an hour. And then if you add on there, you were looking to the side, or you hit your head on the glass, or you hit your head on the steering wheel, or how about you have whiplash forward and then the airbag comes out and hits you like Mike Tyson across the face.
Yeah.
Wabam. Yeah. Right? You're dealing with something significant.
Hopefully it doesn't bite your ear off or fight Jake Paul.
Did you watch that fight?
I was at that fight.
You went to the fight?
I went to the fight.
It was here in Dallas. So
it made me really sad, by the way, because I have an autographed Mike Tyson Nintendo Punch-Out deal in my office and signed boxing gloves. He's kind of like my hero. And just watching that, I was like, son of a...
What is your take on that fight?
I think it was what it was. Like watching all the pre-fight lead up, like I was hyped. I'm like, Mike Tyson's gonna knock this fool out. And then the more it went on, and the crowd there was interesting. It was like a ton of influencers. It was it was just like a spectacle.
It was a spectacle. In Netflix, I don't know if you know about this because you were there. Netflix dropped the absolute ball. Like if you were watching it from home, I have like the newest LG TV. I couldn't even get Netflix to work. Like the app wouldn't work so I'm like, this is bizarre. Then I go on my phone. I'm with people at my house. We're having like a party. Nobody could get Netflix to work. I mean, it was terrible with like repeat sections. Did you hear about, or did you see after Mike Tyson, like in his underwear, like kissing his son behind the scenes? So they're like going around the crowd. All of a sudden they cut to this.
Yeah.
And it was clearly something that happened earlier, and they're like, "We've got to show this.
Yeah.
This is gold."
I think that was like a Halloween costume thing. Yeah. But I had people FaceTiming me to like just turn the phone around, show me the fight.
Watch.
I'm like, I don't know if there's anything to watch at this point.
Do you think there was a handshake? Like, hey, you're not going to hit me that hard?
I want to say I heard that there was something in the contract to that effect and I think he was pulling punches a little bit, but it was clear in person he ran out of gas very quickly. He was not faking the lack of conditioning. I mean, he's old. How old is he now? 60?
He's old. I definitely think that he didn't have the gas, but I think that if Jake Paul, I think he really could have beat that old man up if he really wanted to. And I know nothing about boxing, but I'm watching this going, come on.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm a dad now, and so I feel like I have some old man strength. I'm not in shape anymore, but I'm in shape enough that like if a young whippersnapper wanted some, like let's go. Like I'll scrap. But I think old man strength rapidly declines at some point.
Peaks and then drops.
Yeah. And I don't know if that has to do with the natural tendency of males to lose testosterone after age 30. But
probably.
Yeah, I think I could hold my own probably for another 10 years, and then I'm not fighting anybody that's, more than 10 years younger than me.
As an attorney in today's age of phones and just the culture we live in, would you, I mean, you said you would fight somebody, but as an attorney, would you actually scrap with somebody? Is that,
Here's my take on that. If I wouldn't do it over words, like I have thick enough skin that people call me bad names every day. I had in a mediation, it was on, I had an older attorney trying to come in the room and fight me. And I'm laughing because it's like, oh, it's Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Like I'm gonna have to Jake Paul this guy. If you attack me or you threaten my family, like I will do whatever it takes. Yeah, I'd absolutely on camera, I will lay you out. But beyond that, no, I'm a lover, not a fighter,
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've watched some of your videos and you've got content on everything, and it's not just obviously personal injury. Like you talk about all kinds of different things. What is your wildest case? I mean, the first one you told me, which was you back was that in Florida when you said the guy and his girlfriend and dragging her down the street? What is your craziest case, maybe of recent?
Man, I need to write like a coffee table book about this. I
got a name for it. The Wolf's Wildest Cases.
Yeah, let's go. Maybe just me howling on the back. It could be like one of those cards that you open with the sound. Just like I've had some crazy ones, man. I'll say a recent one that was just like, I don't understand how that happened and how everybody lived. We had a husband and a wife who were in a big rig in an 18-wheeler, and wife was accompanying husband on a long haul run. This happened here in Texas, down near Temple. They stopped at Burger King, like, BK, we're going to have it your way, baby. And husband is eating a cheeseburger while he's driving on I-35 and starts choking. Now you've got this massive multi-ton boulder rolling down the road where nobody's in control. Wife's in the front and sees him choking, like to the point where the BK is lodged in his throat.
Oh, God.
And he collapses into the center of the big rig. And then nobody's driving the vehicle. So he's not wearing a seatbelt. She's not wearing a seatbelt. The vehicle crashes into a pillar underneath the overpass. He gets ejected, lands on the highway, dislodges what he was choking on.
I was going to say, it's quite the Heimlich maneuver.
He lives. This vehicle then falls 10 feet down to the service road below. And I mean, the cab of this truck was just mangled. Like if you looked at it, no one survived that crash, and they both survived. And she was trapped in the back. So the police originally thought she was sleeping. There's a sleeping quarters back there. She was tossed back there, and they both survived.
You think she survived because she got tossed back there?
I think so. Her? Because where the impact, like the crush impact, if she would have been still sitting on that seat, there's no way. And so I'll share a photo with you of the wreckage, and you'll say the same thing. But
we'll put that on the
yeah. So here's an interesting thing too. This is why it's crazy. So wife was not supposed to be in his work vehicle while he was working, but it's commonplace, you know. And they both survived, and multiple law firms passed up this case. And we have a system where if we are not going to take a case, and it's for something like coverage or denial, we re-review it. So my office manager, shout out, she's amazing. She's been with us 4 years now, this past week. So she's awesome. She identified that I think there's some coverage here. So I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So we made the claim for the wife against the husband because he shouldn't have been eating, you know, he should have been operating the vehicle in a safe manner. And we recovered $1 million.
That is creative, by the way.
And this is the good part about the job. This was life-changing for them, and net to them was more than $500,000. Not only that, we went back and they had hospital liens. So many people don't know that if you're injured in a county, there's a statute in Texas that allows a hospital or anybody that's provided emergency medical care to file a lien in the property records, like a lien they put on your house. And
the hospital can put a lien on your property.
They don't put it on your property, but they file notice in the public record. It's similar. I was kind of giving an analogy. And so they had a hospital lien, and it's enforceable. So if you make a recovery from a responsible third party, that hospital lien attaches and your attorney has to deal with it. So part of what we do is we negotiate those. And so obviously you can imagine multiple surgeries, long stay in the hospital, their bills definitely exceeded $1 million. So not only were we able to negotiate with the hospital, we were able to put, after our attorney's fees, after all their medical bills and their liens were negotiated, more than $500,000 in their pocket.
Wow.
And they were able to buy a house and get off the road for a while, and really to see it be life-changing after such a traumatic event felt good.
So that's awesome, by the way. That's fantastic. I didn't know where that was going, but that is fantastic. that I can't help but think, if I was in her shoes, do you save your husband or do you stop this big rig? Because both are ticking time bombs.
100%. That's like one of those when people ask you that question, like, okay, you've got your wife and your girlfriend and you're holding them off the edge of a cliff and you have to let one go. Or your mom and your dad, you know.
So I'm like literally playing this through my head. Like, what would I have done first?
You can only save one. Who do you save?
Because the thing is, if it crashes, you're both dead.
Yeah.
If you try to slow the thing down and then save him, you might have a little bit of time.
Yeah. And I think at that point that the vehicle was careening, like I think it all happened. It was pretty bang bang. So she didn't have enough time to make that decision.
I get it.
Yeah, we see that stuff every day where I'm like, Matt, like, hi, I'm John Quiones. What would you do? You know, like, yeah. I don't know.
That makes me also think about these self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Who is liable in these sort of cases?
So these, we haven't had one come through yet, but
the old Waymos and all that. Are they in Dallas?
I don't know. I saw one. I didn't get in one. I saw one go by me in LA. I was out there.
They're out in LA for sure.
Yeah. I think they may have them in Austin.
I watched this. Do you know who Theo Von is? You watch Theo Von?
I love Theo Von, man.
Did you hear him talking to Zuckerberg about this? And obviously Zuckerberg is like, so like, you make a joke and he's like,
yeah.
He's like,
that's a good Zuckerberg right there.
He's like, I think I saw the Waymos smoking a cigarette behind a
Walmart or a Costco.
He's like, they're all grouped up in the circle.
I did. I was headed back from Houston and I had that. I was trying to listen to the podcast and I was just cracking up.
It's great. You know, it's interesting.
He's like, they were all mad about something, you know, it was just
so I always think about this. Even when I remember Tesla was I remember this very distinctly when I was in either undergrad or chiropractic school when Tesla was testing out their self-driving features, right? And I just remember there was an article, I don't know if they were testing them in Houston at the time, I don't remember where it was, but the thing was going through like, the construction barrels and just took out like 10 of them. And it was like, all right, back to the drawing board. This isn't ready. If that's a human being, who's liable? Is it the engineer? Is it Tesla? Is it Elon Musk? Who's in charge?
It's the company. So we would, in that circumstance, we would definitely go after the company, because if whether it is or isn't safe, we call that the res ipsa. That accident would not have happened in the absence of someone's negligence. And if you put a product into the stream of commerce that's not ready to be in the stream of commerce, you assume that risk. That's on you. So if the product malfunctioned, it's a product liability case, and it would be brought against the manufacturer. And so, Waymo, the company, even the vehicle developer. So let's say Waymo was just buying these cars from Elon Musk. Everybody in the stream of responsibility would be looked at.
So I'd imagine their insurance policies have to be extreme.
Yeah.
To be insured for something that's like this, right?
Yeah. But, I think the insurers that are taking this risk on, they're pretty smart guys. And so I would assume that the upside is worth it, the premiums that they're collecting versus what they're having to pay out, because they've factored in that people are going to die and be seriously injured and will have to pay out. So they're collecting accordingly.
I assume that works similar if you're like in an Uber as a passenger and something happens.
We have had 1,000,001 Uber and Lyft cases. We're representing a guy right now against Lyft. This is a crazy case. I'm not forgot about this. And it was in the news here, and someone got in and slashed his throat from behind and tried to carjack him. And
where was this at, by the way?
This was just over here in the Plano area. So this happened within the last year. It was all over the news. It made national news.
There goes all my clients, by the way. Just next door, right now. I'm messing.
So the guy slashes his throat, jumps out. The reason he survived, this was really traumatic for him. The reason he survived is he didn't realize his throat had been cut, and he looked down, and he obviously saw what was coming out, and he reached up when the guy came back for the kill shot, and he was able to grab it. Young guy, he was able to fight him off, get out of the vehicle, rushed in, surgery. The most amazing part to me, again, it's like, wow. The more severe injury was to his hand, because, and this was pretty hard to look at. He missed the main arteries left and right barely, and he somehow here did not get deep enough to do severe damage to his vocal cords. Wow. So that case, that's a little difficult case. I think we're going to bring that in California against Lyft there. Heads up. We're coming. If you guys see this, but we've had some wild stuff. I had another case where a girl got into a swimming pool and had flesh-eating eye amoeba. We just signed a case where apartment complex. It was in the news down in Houston. There were some bats that get into this girl's apartment. She woke up in the middle of the night and there were bats flying around her room, and she thought someone broke in, so she called the police. So how is that a personal injury? Well, she just had a series of unnecessary rabies shots and was pretty traumatized by it. So had the apartment complex, this could have been prevented, by the way. So she put them on notice, and then they sent an exterminator. There were holes in the roof, so reasonable inspection would have allowed, and in the chimney would have allowed them to take some action to keep these bats from coming back in, because they came back in. And now, so that's a mess. That's a pretty wild one.
How often you're not taking these phone calls, right? I assume you have a team that's in taking them.
I used to take every single phone call, but yeah, my team, we have an intake system. And so, I see a lot of what
comes. Are you numb to these, or is this, how often are you like, what?
You asked me early on why personal injury. You've heard us just a small sample of like my last few weeks.
Sure.
This is interesting, and it never gets old, And so that's part of the reason why I get to be myself. 100% authentic.
Yeah.
Like I said, I get to wear my Tupac t-shirts and talk shit to defendants and be myself. You can't do that in every profession. And it's never a dull moment. And we, at the end of it, although we go through hell, we usually do something positive for people that have been wrong. So there's some nobility in it to me.
That's fantastic. I love that. So I named this podcast, What Can We Get Into? Because, it's funny. I was recording me setting this up, and I was kind of doing like a voiceover as I was sort of telling a story on how this came about. This podcast was originally named the Waiting Room Podcast, which I thought was kind of cool. But after a while, I was like, it's kind of stale. And it was in my waiting room. I'm very original. It was in my waiting room. After 2 episodes, the acoustics sucked, the lighting sucked. I had an Amazon driver beat down the door while I was recording and had to pause. So, I was thinking, like, I have patients that come here all the time, and one thing I pride myself in is really learning my patients and learning about them. And early on, I didn't realize this when I got in this profession, is I have like 5 to 10 minute speed dating sessions with multiple people a day, to where it's kind of like, what can we get into, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about how you're into cooking, or are we going to talk about how your husband just asked you if you want a divorce? Like, you know what I mean?
You're part therapist.
Part therapist, right? And I always joke with people. I'm like, how you doing today? They're like, mentally, physically. I'm like, I'm here for it all. Whatever you want to do. You want to spill it on me while I work on you? Go ahead. So anyways, this podcast, what can we get into? We've gotten into a lot of law and a lot of fun stuff. I love it all. What are you into outside? When we met 30 seconds in, you're like, hey man, I DJ.
Yeah.
So what else are you into? I would love to hear more about DJing, but what else are you into?
So first and foremost, man, I think I'm a dad. I'm a girl dad. So I have an 8 and 11-year-old daughter, and they're in that phase in life where it's sports and dance and, my family first. So I try to be present. So whether I put in a 12-hour day, like I was in the office until 9 o'clock, I make it a point to get home to put them to bed. So it starts there. And then I love cars. I love watches. And yes, DJing is like my passion right now. So my DJ name is Sin City. So play on my last name, Siddique, Sinsiddi. And I love house music, hip hop music. Every once in a while I'll play a show around town. And so that's... Do
you advertise that you're a personal injury attorney while you're DJing, or is that kind of like...
I'll wear a 1-800 The Wolf injury attorney. Like I have this it's a black t-shirt with a big bright wolf head, and it says it has drip on it. It says 1-800 The Wolf accident attorneys. And so been doing a lot of fun content too. I get down and we'll film some stuff in Houston. We open an office down there, and the other day I popped into Johnny Dang's. Do you know who Johnny Dang is?
Johnny Dang. Were you getting some chains or what?
Diamond Boy. So I went in there and I ran into that Mexican OT. So
wow.
So it was just sometimes. My life is a movie, and sometimes that movie is either a good one or a bad one, but it's never, I never have a disinteresting day, or not interesting day, should I say. But yeah, DJing, dad stuff, cars.
So it's funny. I've had 7 podcasts, and I've had probably 4 Rolexes on here that I've seen.
Yeah.
So walk me through your watch journey.
So my watch journey started once upon a time. My dad, obviously, he immigrated to this country, and so there's a couple of status symbols. It's a Mercedes.
Okay. It's
a Rolex. And then it's having a kid who's a doctor or a lawyer.
Where are you from, by the way?
I grew up here in Texas. I was born here. My mom, she's got blonde hair, and my dad, he's Pakistani. So it was like growing up in my house, like growing up in Gaza, dude, it was just like it was just like a war. But I had amazing parents that were supportive, and it was very colorful growing up. And, but my dad was, he was raised old school. Like you get your education, you work very hard. And if that's not cutting it, you get more jobs or you get businesses.
Work harder.
Yeah. So growing up, we had, he was an engineer. He had his real estate license. He had a jewelry store, all the typical Pakistani guy stuff, furniture shop, you name it. But he would never buy himself nice things. He always took care of us. He provided for us. So when I was, probably 18, 19, I think I had good credit, because I hadn't been around long enough to ruin it yet. And my mom was like, I think we should buy your dad a Rolex, and then we'll pay it off, and then at some point we'll pass it down and we'll start a family tradition. So it's engraved. So it's a two-tone Jubilee Datejust, and it's my favorite watch because it has meaning. And that was my first watch of the collection. And then I kind of got the bug. So the first nice watch I bought myself was a Breitling Chronomat 44 with a blue band. It's hideous, according to my wife. But it's got a diamond bezel. And
How does everybody start with the Breitling?
I think because it's just
Breitling or
affordable
Tag?
enough. Yeah, Breitling or Tag. I'm not a Tag guy. So
I'm not either.
I went to the Breitling, and then I started adding to my collection. So this is a Batgirl.
Batgirl.
Yeah. So
Those went crazy during COVID. I don't know how long you got that or where you got it from, but
yeah, it's an interesting story. I'm a sucker for a deal, but we'll save that for a non on air. I'll tell you that story one day.
So did you get that from an AD or not AD?
No, non-AD. I have a Frank Mueller Conquistador.
Wow. Okay.
I have Cartier.
Okay.
I have a nice little Cartier.
Tank? Cartier
No, it's the Cartier Santos. It's
Santos.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I have an Apple iWatch.
Got to throw that in there.
And my next purchase, so I'm actually looking for 3 right now. I want a rose gold Sky Dweller, but I'm gonna leave that for.
Look good on your skin tone, I think.
Yeah, I have a buddy. He's a fitness influencer. His name's Jason Poston, and we were at a Cowboys game, and I looked down. I'm like, bro, I'm just gonna be that guy right now. I love your watch, and it was a rose gold Sky Dweller. So I'm like, I need that.
So you're either gonna say AP or Patek next.
Well, no, I got to get through my Rolexes, and then we'll move on to those. And so when I get a big win or something, or I come across a good deal, I'll try to pick one up. So I want an old school bluesy. I want a all stainless steel Jubilee Wimbledon, which is Datejust 41.
Yeah.
I need the rose gold Sky Dweller, and then I want to go.
You just
AP.
went like 12,000, 15,000, and like 45,000.
45. So yeah, there's levels. So this. Not smaller, they're expensive watches, but I try to satisfy the urge by buying the least expensive ones that I know that I like, that I want first. Yeah. And then, I feel like I'm missing some. I've got a ton of watches.
Do you know the guys? Have you ever been to the store Shops Legacy called Wolven?
I have not.
They're a gray market watch. They got a lot of cool content out. I want to have them on the podcast because I like watches a lot, but yeah, they've got some awesome stuff there. But yeah. So you like watches?
Like watches. Suits.
Yeah.
So this is a Canali. So this is probably the only thing you'll see me wear, like off the shelf. They make a really good product, but there's a guy, and his company's called Soto & Co. And so the first like bespoke suit when, I think lawyers need to project a good image. I happen to like it. So whether I'm in a t-shirt or you'll see me in a sport coat, you'd see me in Nikes, jeans, but I'll usually have a nice jacket on. So Soto & Co., he's a guy out of Austin, and I so love his story and his hustle. He started making suits out of a van. It's a black van. And he started doing a lot of the guys down at UT. I'm a UT guy. I big Longhorn fan, so went to school down there. It's where I met my wife. And so he came up to my office, and we sat, and we just customized the interiors. We picked everything out. And so what my brother's saying was never, never, never give up. And so I have that in a lot of my suit jackets.
Special,
or if you flip up, my lapel, it'll either say every day I'm hustling, because that's my motto, like I don't stop. So it's either never give up or every day I'm hustling is usually embroidered somewhere on my jackets.
I love it. That's cool. I've always wanted to do a custom suit, but I can't justify it because I literally wear suits like 5 times a year.
Yeah. So good place to start. And we're giving them some free airtime, but Indochino is here. And
interesting. No, I've checked that out. Yeah.
And so I've got a couple from them. Those are reasonably priced. So they're not quite bespoke, but they do a decent product. So if you just want to get one to try it out.
How about Tom James?
I've had a couple of guys reach out, but at the time I was using Alton Lane. They're out here in Dallas, and so Alton Lane or Soto & Co. were my go-tos.
I love it. Last thing I want to touch on is DJing. I find that to be that's awesome. So tell me, what kind of gear do you use when you DJ?
Yeah, so I actually was lucky in that I got to learn on CDJ 3000. So like club level stuff.
It's like your first watch being a Rolex.
It is, man. And I felt like I didn't realize what an honor and privilege it was to learn on those things. And so then everything after that, I had my first little kind of deck was digital one was a Pioneer Flex 4. And so I kind of quickly grew out of that. And I have an RX3 now, which kind of mimics the CDJs.
The CDJs a little bit. That's all one, isn't it?
It's one, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's self-contained, and then I can just plug my USB in, which is what I like to do. It's like I don't really like messing with a laptop. I like to just throw all my stuff on there and grab it.
You know what's interesting is I've been dabbling with DJing for a decade and a half, and it was at the sort of the initial DJ off your computer, virtual DJ and stuff like that. And I was always like, I don't understand why you would want to have wouldn't you want to see everything? And I understand it now why people do that. One thing I don't understand necessarily, in this is just me in how I operate, if I was going to DJ, is needing 4 decks. Yeah. Have you ever needed 4 decks?
I've never needed 4 decks. And like I learn new stuff and new tricks every day, and I still you can do just fine with 2. But I get, you see like you see the James hypes out there, and he's like spinning stuff and hitting buttons.
Are you a John Summit fan?
Yeah, I like John Summit. I think I mentioned to you before we jumped on, I'm going to Ibiza. Yeah. So I'm gonna get to see Calvin Harris. I'm get to see MK. I'm going to see a couple of awesome. Black Coffee. I'll get to see some of the cool guys that are.
I didn't know this, but apparently Black Coffee does like 8-10 hour sets.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's just like a marathon.
Yeah, I'm old, man. I'm like, hey, if it ends at 8 and I can get home by 10, like.
On the other hand, have you ever been to Space in Miami?
I have, yeah. So, dude, going to law school in Miami was an experience. You got to imagine, like, I chose a school in Miami because I had lived most of my life in Texas and wanted an opportunity. Like, I actually worked out of undergrad and was doing some real estate stuff, and then decided, like, I want to go try this. So I went out of state, and a place where people come to vacation is a very difficult place to put a suit on and go to work. When you're driving by the beach and it's beautiful, and every bus stop you pass, there's a supermodel sitting at it. You're like, wow, like there are 11s sitting at the bus stop. Yeah, now I got to go to work. I got to go to school. So studying, you're looking out the window and it's beautiful weather. And I took the opportunity because I was a little bit older when I went back to law school, and had a little bit of money coming in, but to live on the intercoastal waterway. So I would look out and I would see boats go by, and then I'd read for 4 hours. And then everything in Miami, it's still Miami, would start at 11. So like I would go to school, I would come home, I would work out, I would eat, I would study from 6, 7 to 11 o'clock at night. And then the homies, we would go out, we'd stay out till 3, 4 in the morning. Sometimes if we wound up in Space, we'd be leaving at 6 a.m. Our law school events. I went to St. Thomas. So if you're thinking about going to law school, let's go Bobcats. But St. Thomas, there in Miami Gardens, we would do barristers' balls, kind of like law school prom.
I've DJ'd one before, by the way.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, man, people turn up. But in Miami, like, we would come out and be during Ultra, and like we'd be walking out and Ultra's going on in downtown Miami.
Wow, what a spectacle! And
the back to school events, like we would have at like cool clubs and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it was definitely an awesome place. I have a place in South Florida. I'll be there in 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, but we had to migrate north to Fort Lauderdale. It's a little quieter.
Yeah, no kidding. It's always good to know somebody with a place in South Beach. Is it South Beach or just?
South Beach was one of those things, like when people would come in town, we'd go down there, but that's not a place to hang out.
Awesome, man. Aaron, great talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Tell the people where they can find you if they need an attorney.
Yeah, so if you need anything, 1-800-THE-WOLF, 1-800-THEWOLF.com. You can hit me up. My email is aaron@1-800-THEWOLF.com. You can dial 1-800-THE-WOLF. You can hit us up on Instagram, which is @Wolf of Law Street.
I love that. Aaron, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate.
Yeah.
We'll have you on again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.